whether it's a good or a bad day, you should have a consistent
car.
Consistent car. That's
Yep.
right.
Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and I'm joined by Matt Jenkins, and today we're going to take a look at the BD11 and the finer points of setting it up and getting it race ready.
So some ride height today.
We're going to look at some ride height,
Droop,
droopage,
camber, toe in and so on. Rear toe in particularly.
Yep, we've got a setup station, we've got some setup wheels. Yeah, we're just going to go through a few basic checks that most of us on-roaders do to, and whether it's a BD11 or any. TC or TCR,
Correct.
whatever it is,
Yep.
we usually run these precautionary checks on it and to make sure the car's as we like it. And if it's out, then we can all quick adjustments if we do the droop in that.
So when you put it on the track, it's going to behave as you expect.
As you expect it, yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Because they do, especially when I'm driving them, they do cop a bit of a hiding.
Well, yeah.
And things can move, and it only takes, like a droop screw just to be out like 1/10 of a mil, and that's like a mil
Correct.
at the axle point.
That's right.
So that's why we just run it, and then we know that we're going to be fast.
Yep,
well,
absolutely.
We think we're going to be fast.
We can imagine.
That's right, we
Yep.
can only imagine.
We can only imagine.
Alright, so what's the first thing?
First thing is to put on, the way I do it is everyone's got their methods, right?
Everybody's got their methods, so there's no right and wrong way.
No,
people are probably going to agree with us, disagree with us.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think there's a golden rule, but one of the things that I'd like to do is to put the tyres on that I'm going to run.
Yes.
Alright, so if they're a set of worn tyres, obviously they'll be a little lower
Yes.
than a set of new tyres.
And they do actually wear as
Yep.
every race.
That's right.
Especially when you're running modified.
Yep.
The tyres do cop a lot of a hard time,
Yep.
and the chassis height can drop.
That's right, and the ride height gauges we use are in 0.2 increments, 0.2 of a millimetre
Yeah.
increments. So 0.1 here is 0.2, on the circumference is a 0.2
That's
reduction
right.
in
ride height.
In ride height. So
you
it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and they do actually have a little bit of meat of rubber
Yep.
on the tyre.
That's right.
So the chassis height will degrade as the tyres wear.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm the same. So usually when the car comes in, usually before I even take the battery out from the race before, the first check is ride height.
Ride height.
Because you can't really check anything else unless the car's sitting as you want it to.
Correct. So first thing is to get a nice flat surface. Usually setup boards are pretty common.
Yep.
So
we got a pretty flash one here. YOKOMO one.
YOKOMO one.
Yep.
So first things first is, and then obviously make your car prepared for your next race. So make sure your battery's in. I even plug the terminals in just so that nothing can hang up under the chassis and actually affect how the ride height might come out.
Make sure you got no loose screws underneath, no dirt and gravel on your setup board.
I usually just put the nuts from the setup station on the wheels as well. Just
some
saves a
screws
little
on.
bit of time.
Yep.
Saves a little bit of time. And then proceed to measure ride height.
Alright mate, go for it. Show us how it's done.
Rear ride height, I measure first. So just under there, we've got 5.7.
5.7 on the rear.
Left and right.
Yep.
Or right and left as it would be in this case. Now I normally run a 2 mil reduction in ride height towards the front, so you'd expect a 5.5 mil ride height.
0.2 reduction.
0.2.
Yep.
So you'd expect 5.5 at the front.
Yep.
Which we have.
And then if it was out, how do you adjust it?
Alright, so I think we might be in trouble on this side.
We might be in trouble.
No, on the other side we are. So it was actually 5.7. So the shock collar here.
Yep.
Just reduce the spring collar a little bit. Give it a bit of a bounce.
Yep.
Let it settle.
And away we go.
And away we go. So we've got 5.5 left and right.
Yep.
And 5.7 mil ride height for the rear.
Fantastic. So we know the car's sitting right.
Correct.
Okay.
On the wheels that you've got.
On the wheels that you're going to run in your race.
Correct.
Okay. So then what do we do?
So next, I usually go for droop setting.
Droop setting. So for that we need to take the wheels off. And it's important to note which wheels on which position.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but I usually mark it inside of the wheels.
Correct.
Make sure that you haven't lost your axle width spaces or anything like that.
Yep. So, I'll put them on just the same. And then up on some 10mm blocks.
I use the 10mm blocks.
Yep.
Yep.
So, and try and put the 10mm blocks in the same position every time.
Yeah.
Alright.
And that's it. And like I said, there's no necessarily right or wrong way.
No.
But as long as you're doing it consistently,
Correct.
your car and the measurements will be the same for you
That's
every
right.
time.
That's right. And what it means is when you go out on track and you've got a setup that you're happy with,
Yep.
and you go out on track and you say, oh look, I haven't quite got enough turn in, you can say, all right, maybe I can give myself a 0.1 mil more rear droop to actually get the car to tip in a little bit more. And when you've got a good setup in mind, or a setup of any base foundation, whether it's good or bad, you can always improve when you know the measurements.
Yeah. So you've got to know the measurements, otherwise you don't know which direction you're heading.
Correct.
And what you started with.
So droop gauge.
Yes.
All right. So to measure the droop, generally I go to the inner side of the arm on these.
Yep. And you're going under the outer of the rear of the hinge pin.
Correct.
Yep.
So 5.6 on the knocker.
And again, that is in 0.2 mil increments.
Correct. Yep. 5.6.
Yep.
And obviously your droop setting is dependent on the track and the ride height that you're running.
Absolutely.
Right. So and we should have 5.6 here. Yep.
Yep. And now if that was wrong, for example, you could get your 2 mil.
2 mil driver.
2 mil driver. You need ball end.
Should be right. A big improvement actually on these new arms is the top link doesn't get in the way of the droop screw anymore.
Yep.
So
you don't need to have a ball end 2 mil.
So I can just adjust that way out of whack.
So now we're down at 4.8.
4.8. Yep.
And we know we need to be at, what was it, 5.2? Need to check now.
5.6.
5.6. So as simple as winding that in until the feeler gauge goes under there, and then usually tap the arm from the top.
Yeah, so you don't feel there's no gap.
Yep, there's no gap.
Yep. And sometimes you can feel a little bit of a static slide in, a bit of friction as it slides in under the arm, and you know you're in the right position.
Beautiful.
All right.
And again, now for doing droop on the rear,
you might want to do that one.
I want to do this one. So I'm going to slide in the droop gauge from the back, and I'm going to do the rear of the outer hinge pin.
Correct.
So we're going to have a look at that, and here we are. We're at 5.8. 5.6.
5.6.
So we've got the same droop front and rear. Is that right?
On this particular car, yep.
At the moment.
And
all I'm doing is listening. So this one here is actually got a little bit too much droop. While I move it all around for Matt, he'll be loving it. Cringing what I'm doing to his poor little car.
I mean, this isn't to suggest these settings are correct either, right?
No. But as long as you know what you're after.
That's right.
Front and rear, left and right, you've got a basis and you've got a measuring point.
Correct.
And it's more just about constantly and being consistent.
Yep.
Going through the measurements. And then if you have an accident or the car goes out of whack, you know it before you start your next race.
Correct. And you know where you need to go back to. That's right.
Yep.
So you've got your foundation. All right, so we've got droop set.
We've got droop set. So I suppose the next thing that I would do, Matt, is probably head towards the camber.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah? Is that what we were going to do?
We're going to do that.
And for that, we're using a setup station. And these are invaluable tool. Which way do you have the rears on? Facing forward?
Forward, yep.
So you can look at the car all from one side.
Yep.
Get these on, these thumb screws.
So this suspends the car, and the thumb screws push the setup jig against the hex.
Against the hex, that's all. It's important. That's what's important, to have it nice and clean. So we know the ride height's right. We know the droop's right. So this is as the car would be sitting on its race tyres.
Correct. And the important thing about making sure your ride height's correct first is as the ride height changes, your camber changes.
The camber changes, and your toe somewhat.
Correct. So you can get camber gain or camber loss, and so on. So the car will behave differently if you don't have your ride height set first correctly.
Absolutely.
All right. So for this particular car, we're looking for 1 degree all round.
1 degree all round.
So looking at the front here, we are quite a way out.
Yep. And here is our turnbuckle adjustment spanner. Again from the stables of Aromax. And this is a multi-fit tool. So that one tool will keep you covered for a heck of a lot of your applications.
So this does the, on the BD11, it actually is it's thin enough to actually do the pivot ball for the suspension.
Yeah, under the pivot balls,
yep. That's right. Alright, so we're looking for 1 degree all round. So usually just make sure the car's settled from putting the setup station on.
Yep.
And then proceed to adjust. Oops, where am I?
Which size have we got there?
4 mil.
4 mil?
wrong way.
And it's easy to tell when you're going the wrong way because it'll
pivot.
move
That's right.
very, very, obviously with a great deal of accuracy.
Correct. So we're at 1 mil there, or 1
degree. And this car is a fresh build.
Correct.
So this car hasn't actually been run yet.
Hasn't been on the track yet. Hasn't been on the setup station yet either, obviously.
Yep.
All right.
And it's the best time to do it. There's nothing like setting up a new build. I don't know. It's the
bit of gratification when it all comes together at the end, isn't there?
Until you go out and hit the first board.
Or get pushed into the first board.
That's right. You get pushed into the first board.
They're the stories that come off the driver's stand anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, doesn't matter. The good story is always important. There we go. So we've got 1 degree all round.
Yep. That is fantastic. Now I suppose the next thing that we can look at is the toe. And that is the angle that the wheels are pointed in or out towards the centre line of the chassis.
At your given ride height. That's
yes.
correct. Yep.
Yeah. Now this car does have a rear toe control system, the BD11.
Yep.
So we've got full turnbuckle adjustment and toe gain or toe loss adjustment.
Depending on the height of the washer that you put in, yes.
Yep.
This particular car at this stage will be set up with toe gain.
Yes.
Right.
And how much are you going for? Well, we'll be able to tell.
We'll be able to tell. So at the moment it should be set to around 3 degrees.
Yep. Now you can see here we've got a really fine little line. So I just want to come out a little bit. Get the right size tool. Like so. Or not.
You can take that off if you like to.
I think I might have to, mate. Just going to sort of...
Get it out of whack.
Just going to go like one flat at a time. There we have 3 degrees.
Okay.
And then it's as simple as sliding it across. And now I have my line indicator here. And that side is actually spot on, so I don't even have to adjust that side.
So now you can actually check for the toe gain.
Yep.
Alright.
So we can have a look, we can put it at 3 degrees, then we can compress the rear suspension.
Yep.
And we can see.
So you're at near 4 degrees now. Oh, 99.
So what have we got?
About 3.25. Just a little over 3.
Yep. So we've got very little in the way of gain.
That's right. So,
but we have got gain.
But you can actually adjust it so that you have no gain, so it's static at 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And you can actually have it so you're getting toe out.
Correct.
I've heard some people playing around with that setting.
Yeah, so that you get like a 4-wheel steering kind of feel. Yep.
And it's no different to the front. So we'll put it on the front. Now, ordinarily, I'd probably have the radio on at this point.
That's right.
Especially on a fresh build, because that way you can really get your servo sub trims.
That's right.
Centered. If not, you can take your servo horn off, relocate it, put it on, adjust the linkage here a little bit if need be.
Yep.
Then you can set your endpoints and your lock to lock.
Yep.
And you know that's right when you can turn your dual rate down like 2%, and both sides are still even left and right. Because there's nothing worse than you're driving a car and it doesn't feel right, you turn the dual rate down and all of a sudden it's turning more left than it is right.
Very annoying.
So you end up, you know...
Especially on big sweeping tracks where you do need that steering rate to be equal.
Yeah. Yeah, it just throws you off a bit. That's
right.
Whereas if you got a 100% or over 100%, when you're full lock, it's all bound up anyway.
That's right.
So that's why it's really nice to spoil yourself with a setup station.
Look, I think setup station is one of the more important tools.
Yeah.
For touring car racing.
Yes.
There are other ways to measure the camber and so on, but this is probably the easiest and the most effective way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something that I like. I usually have a setup station at the track. It's not something I like to do trackside unless I've had a big bingle.
That's right.
You know, I've got usually more basic ways to set I usually do it with the setup wheels. I'll do camber just to have a look if anything's moved.
With a quick camber gauge.
Yeah, with the quick camber gauge.
Yep.
Set the ride height and droop, and then off you go.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, like your turnbuckles and that really shouldn't unwind or move unless you've had a bingle where you've got to change your steering block or your caster hub or some such.
Just hope not to have those, that's all.
Fantastic. So we've checked our toe. Our front toe now, we're looking at, what is it?
Should be
1?
static at 1, yep.
Yep, we're pretty much 1 to front on. And that's why it's nice to have your servo on, because when you try and put it all the way up, you're actually moving the servo a little bit.
Yep.
So it's really hard. So we've got one there, and we've got one here.
Yep.
And that's generally what you'll have.
Yeah.
You usually have, generally speaking, 3 degrees rear of toe in.
Yep.
So the wheels are pointed in towards the middle.
That's right.
And then you'll have like 1 degree of toe out on the front. And that's, in fact, just to help the car track straight.
Correct.
And you can put 2 degrees, but it can sort of get a bit wayward on bumpy tracks and can make it a bit aggressive off steering.
And toe out usually gets you a better turning angle too. So
that's right.
Yeah.
But if you run like toe in on the rear and toe in on the front, the car will be like all over the place. It's really hard to keep the car actually straight.
Correct.
Because you've got the front and rear trying to fight itself.
Correct.
So that's why we will refer to it as toe out on the front.
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay, so what's the next thing, Matty?
All right. Probably just put it on some setup wheels.
Put on some setup wheels. The last thing I like to do, this is usually where the tyre goop will go on, I suppose, before the race, is I'll just do a little bit of, what would I call it? A little bit of tweak. I suppose. And you can use it, I suppose the proper way to do this is on scales, but then you've got to have the board level, you know, and everything like that to make sure the scales are calibrated.
Yep.
So I will, trackside, I will just pick up the body post and I will adjust it through the corners of the car. So if I'm adjusting if I want to check the front tweak, I will actually pick up the rear of the car. So, and I can see here just how far this rear corner that I'm picking up is lifting. You can even use a ride height gauge to confirm.
Yep.
How far it's lifting up before
the other side.
The other side. So here we're at a good 5.5 mil. And over here, if I do the same thing, we'll see how, if the car in fact is in tweak. Over here, it's a little bit of a delicate adjustment. So here I'm up to 5.7.
It's just lifting now.
It's just lifting now. So that indicates to me that I can just wind down here a quarter of a turn on this one. And then I'll wind up on this corner. So the ride height is going to remain the same.
Correct.
However, I'm changing the preload across the corner of the car. So this one now should hopefully lift up just ever so slightly less. And you only ever want, if your car's straight,
there you go.
There we go. And it just took a quarter of a turn.
Yep.
And then I can throw it around this side and we'll do the front, well, which is actually the rear setting.
Yep. But so, I guess the springs are never ever identically manufactured, right?
No, the springs aren't, and the balance of the chassis may not either.
Correct.
Because your car will generally pick up a tweak to a track.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen people try to measure the distance between the shock collar and the top of the shock cap, and that's just not the way. Because they're assuming that the spring's going to have the same preload on the corner.
That's right, and it can actually help when you're building a car for your own OCD to make sure that it's all right.
Yep.
But usually when you throw it on the scales or doing this system, you'll find out in fact how far it is wrong. Now I've got quite a lot of variance on this side, so I'm going to go as far as half a turn over here. In and half a turn out. Again, the ride height shouldn't be changing. Just going to try and, it's got 4 mil over here.
There you go.
And we're right on. Perfect. So that was just a little adjustment, and a little quick adjustment. Then I suppose the last thing is to put on your race tyres. Put on your body. Now your body is going to affect your overall ride height and stuff, but it's nearly impossible to do with your body on.
Correct.
So as long as you take it into consideration when you're setting your car up, you know, the body shouldn't change. The weight of your body shells, even if you're running a few different ones, shouldn't really change more than 20 grams, I suppose, or 10 grams.
And I guess if you've got that methodology going forward through to the start of every race, you should have whether it's a good or a bad day, you should have a consistent car. Consistent car. That's right.
And usually, like I'm not super fast, but usually my main tuning tools are ride height and droop.
Absolutely.
And that's how you change the balance of the car without changing the car like too far from a setup. Like Matt said before, if you want more on power steering, you might give a little bit,
take a bit of droop away.
You might take a little bit of droop away from the front.
That's right.
If you want it to tip in a little bit harder, you might add a little bit more droop on the rear.
That's right.
And you're only talking like 0.2, 0.5.
That's right. It's amazing how much weight transfers in such a small increment.
Yeah.
From the small increments of change. From
and how it changes the car. And I like making those changes because they're really easy to measure.
Club day.
And they take very little to do.
Yeah. And you don't actually need a setup station to change that.
No.
You know, just a set of 10mm blocks.
10mm blocks and a droop gauge, and you're off.
Yep.
So,
but yeah, I'd probably recommend that's probably some of the. If you're just racing a club day, I'd probably recommend that's probably two of the settings that you'd change or play with the most because they are really, really easy. Ride height and droop. Yeah, definitely.
And you can really change the dynamics of the car.
Correct.
You know.
Yep.
And this car, the BD11 is no different. We're out of the box setup. It's been fantastic.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely dynamite.
Whether you're running 21.5 or modified, the box setup with the springs and everything works really well.
Yep.
So do yourself a favour, check it out, and I hope you've enjoyed Matt and myself. Doing a setup on the BD11.
Great stuff.
We're from Hearns, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.